Know your lane. Video games are an extremely unique medium. Unlike books or movies or whatever, they have the capability of telling a story in a fundamentally unique way than most other mediums, and that is the layer of interactivity that comes with playing a video game. This isn't just a matter of player choice, though that can be a massive part of it, and we'll get into that. See, you are not only a passive observer in the story being told, you are an active participant in it. You are the one going around the world. You are the one engaging in these actions. The story is being revolved around you. And because of this very simple notion, you can achieve layers of immersion and connection with the story that other mediums simply can't have access to. They have to utilize the unique advantages of their own medium to their advantage to tell a story. But things like cinema and books have been so ingrained in us for so long, and for most of us our entire lives, that our natural ways that we think of telling a story kind of devolve to those methods. And the methods that are unique and work for those mediums, but they may not just translate over to video games one for one. And you can see this a lot in a lot of games out there that are extremely cutscene heavy, where your active participation feels more like a buffer, a loading screen if you will, so that you can be rewarded with actual narrative and story going on. Now, I am a fan of cutscene heavy games. Xenoblade 2 is my second favorite game of all time, for crying out loud. But there are methodologies and ways to tell a story in the video game format that involve the use of the player, whether emotionally or physically or mechanically, that I think more often than not are woefully underutilized or mismanaged. And I think one of the reasons Baldur's Gate 3 has blown up as much as it has in recent months since its release is because the game extremely, or at least is extremely apt at utilizing the methods unique at its disposal as a video game, but also the type of game that it is, to tell a story. The game is riddled with player choice, and it decides to lean on that aspect, player choice, to differentiate itself, to lean to those ideas to tell a story and to make it more engaging, complex, and enjoyable, and to also work as a video game. Rarely is there ever just a cutscene in Baldur's Gate 3, where you don't have some palpable choice that you can invoke or choose at some point during it to have some drastic outcome change or effect on the actual narrative going on. And oftentimes you can change a story, you can have some kind of mechanical say in the goings on of what is happening by leading into your own creativity and thinking outside of the box. There are many different ways that you can change the story going on and alter it in sometimes smaller ways, but also sometimes those smaller ways add up to something big, or in one grandiose slam, you can affect the story on the whole going forward. Baldur's Gate 3 doesn't utilize these ideas or these methodologies or these big moments of player decision and player choice in a sparse context. It's not just, oh, you get to the end of the arc and then all of a sudden you can have one big choice that'll affect the playthrough kind of for the rest of it. And it's not like Mass Effect, and this is no knock on Mass Effect, this is just the style that that game series chose to invoke, where you start off small, then branch out to many different paths, and they all kind of converge into one of three endings in Mass Effect 3. Baldur's Gate 3, you can have giant, seismic, massive effects on the story, seemingly every few minutes or so, just simply on your choice to do something or not to do something, or how you do something. You can gain entire party members and go down their story. You can gain party members and choose not to go down their story. You can gain party members and then at some point in the future lose them for whatever reason, or you can choose to ignore party members to begin with. Or maybe depending upon your choices and character creation, you can have access to different choices that affect different outcomes for those characters. A popular one I like to talk about is if you pick a Dark Urge character, there's a character called Gale. He is a wizard, and you meet this guy. Wizard/sorcerer, I'm still learning the terminology. You meet him as he's trying to get out of a portal he's stuck in, and you only see his hand. Ordinarily, you can either just leave him be or grab and pull him out. If you pick Dark Urge though, you can give in to the voices in your head and just saw his arm off. And moments like these are cool in a vacuum, but when taken into consideration for the entire game, these choices matter. They are weighty. They affect how you go and how you consume the story, but also the mind space that you are put in for the rest of the game. Whether or not you're going to be more receptive to ideas like this in the future, or if you're more pessimistic about how complex and how drastic these changes are to begin with. When it comes to a video game, nothing is ever taken in a vacuum. If something disappoints you, then you're going to remember that disappointment for a while, and that may color or shade your perspective about similar things that may happen later on. For instance, if you are given a bunch of dialogue choices and at no point, or at least extended periods of time, do those dialogue choices have any real palpable effect, you're probably not going to think too much about any given individual dialogue choice for a while until you're proven or shown that they are important. That is not the case with Baldur's Gate 3. It seems like damn near every line of dialogue, or at least choice and option that you have or are given, matters and is important, so you pay more attention. You read the lines, you think of the possible consequences, you think of the tone, you think of what is going on right now, what route you want to go down, and how this could affect everyone else. And it's stuff like that and that mind space that can get you more immersed in the story, because that is a unique way that Baldur's Gate 3 is trying to immerse you in the narrative and to keep you engaged. Not every game needs to go along with this route. This is simply one path that you can invoke or go down to utilize the methodologies and the unique characteristics of being a video game to their fullest potential. And in my opinion, a story in a video game works at its best when it's not just utilizing one aspect of being a video game to its advantage. Baldur's Gate 3 doesn't just utilize dialogue options to give you this sense of interactivity or this sense of immersion in the world. It's not just the only choice you have at your disposal, yet actions also matter. If you come across a certain camp, you can choose to negotiate, persuade, intimidate, fight them, kill them, barter with them, stuff like that. All these choices matter, and they can affect and have rippling consequences down the line. For instance, I found a Zentarum camp in Act 1 of Baldur's Gate 3. Within that camp, they had enslaved a painter. I decided, in my goodwill and infinite wells of compassion, I would find a way to free this painter. He also mentioned how he had a pretty wealthy patron who would be more than willing to compensate me for freeing him. I didn't necessarily trust him, but I hated the tone of these guys anyways, so I thought might as well try and get him out. So I tried to do intimidation tactics to scare them to give me him. That didn't work out, but I did manage to intimidate them to lower the price from 1,000 gold to simply 600. However, once I did that and I freed him, I felt a little bit ripped off. Yeah, I was a little bit nonplussed about the whole circumstance going on there. I could have just walked away. Bear in mind, there was also another side quest to give them a lockbox that I found with the compatriots earlier in my playthrough that I happened to open. But I knew they wanted this box closed. So if I had given them the contents of the box, but they had been opened, they would become antagonistic to me. So there's an entire separate story arc going on with these people with just that. Bear that in mind. But because I felt so ripped off, I decided in my infinite wisdom and my fighter mentality, as well as having Karlach in my party, I decided, you know what? Screw these enslavers, I will just kill everyone here. And you want to know how I took out the leader? I had Karlach shove the leader from on top of a cliff all the way down onto a platform. I then had my player character, Tav, who I call Jmulls, guess why, climb down the ladder, and then as they were on the ground recuperating from being shoved down like 2 stories, I decided to take my giant sword and slash them and kill them. It was a little moment, and that specific consequence of the way I decided to kill their leader probably won't have many major ramifications down the line. But it was a visceral sense of achievement for me. And the way I killed them was unique and fun to me, and that's going to be something that I remember in my own playthrough going forward. How me and Karlach went full Royal Rumble on their ass, and we hit them with the Dudley Boy special. Not every choice has to have massive rippling consequences down the line. The fact that I killed them, that one will. But me shoving them off a ledge and then going down and killing them with my sword, that was just something cool for me. But it's interconnected with another weighty choice that I chose to do. I didn't have to kill them. I could have won the previous intimidation roll and just gotten the paid for free. I could have chose to try and persuade them. I could have given them the open box and then probably fought them anyways. I could have chose not to open the box all that time ago, in which case I could have met up with some of them, at least in Act 3. Now, bear in mind, this all stems from me deciding to follow one jabroni's word of advice to go find his hideout and say some secret passphrase to be given access to a hideout. This was just some random quest I happened to stumble upon that happened to interconnect with another quest that I also happened to stumble upon. The story of Baldur's Gate 3 works not because it could work as a book or because it could work as a movie, but because it works as a video game, because it was constructed and designed around the core principles of being a video game, understanding the tools and unique tools at that was at their disposal while making a video game, and the style of video game that they were making to begin with, utilizing those tools to their fullest advantage. Not using them as a crutch or as an excuse to not be able to tell a compelling story, but to utilize the unique advantages they had at their disposal to tell a more interesting and compelling narrative that they wanted to tell. All of that of what I just told you was one little situation in Act 1. Every 5 minutes, 5 minutes after this, I could have told you about another thing. Because as I explored the rest of their hideout, I found an entire elevator down to the Underdark, which is an entire subterranean massive zone filled to the brim with secrets and new monsters to fight and behold and new items to loot. All of that from one little encounter. Happenstance. Baldur's Gate 3 is filled with these. And that was how Baldur's Gate 3, or at least so far, has chosen to utilize the medium of video games to tell and further the story. I tend to find the best stories are ones that don't try and make excuses for a bad storyteller. They understand what they are, and they know their lane. They don't try and be something that they simply aren't. They can try and strive to be the best version of themselves or to break the mold, but they understand at the end of the day, they are a video game. And by being a video game and thinking outside of the box and having love, care, compassion, and passion for the story they want to tell, that can make the experience all the more enticing, enriching, and fulfilling than trying to be something that they simply aren't. I think this is one of the main reasons why Baldur's Gate 3 has taken off as much as it has since its release, and why it had so much hype for it, and why that hype seems to only be building. Baldur's Gate 3 is a video game unabashedly, unashamed. It has a strong identity, and doesn't feel the need to hold the player's hands. Instead, they want the player's hands to be at work, functioning to make a story surrounding them, predicated and built upon their own desires, interests, and jerk-knee reactions. Things or whims of fancy in the moment that all add up to an overarching idea or goal. I set out for my first playthrough of Baldur's Gate 3 to be a kind of a Cthulhu, Eldritch Horror-esque playthrough, where I would give in to all of the Mind Flayer stuff and sink darkly into that deep abyss. And I thought to romance Shadowheart as well, because I thought aesthetically that would work. But on my first playthrough, I just ended up preferring Karlach. So I'll probably still do the Mind Flayer stuff, but I pivoted. And the game didn't punish me, at least so far. The consequences of the choices I've made in the game still matter, and I can still make more choices, and have those consequences happen as well. The game does its best to not feel limiting from a storytelling perspective, and to allow the player to experience the story that they are unfolding for themselves because of the choices and actions and consequences of those actions. Which is something incredibly difficult to do outside of the confines of a video game, let alone within the video game medium. But Baldur's Gate 3 does them especially well. And I think with that, I'll call the video there for the day. Thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure for making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Stay safe, have a great day, go play some video games if you can, and as always, I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again. Leave a comment down below, by the way, with your favorite little interaction so far in Baldur's Gate 3, or in your favorite game of all time. I'd love to hear your thoughts, hear your opinions, where they best utilize the aspects of being a video game to further the story. Stay safe, have a great day, I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again.